so nervous.
I was trying to think of an impression to do, because everyone's just waiting for me to do another impression, and I just.
But you didn't come up with one this week.
Sorry.
Why don't you do a Brazilian impression?
Fuck, man, I can't.
I can kind of do one.
Go on.
I kind of Brazilian. They kind of speak like this. He's kind of like this kind of. They always kind of like don't finish the end of word. God, that's good.
I don't know.
You would know that I live in the semi-Brazilian district of London.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Yeah. It's like if someone says, "Do you think I'm a good bazoo player?" I can't help you. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you did.
As soon as somebody asks you that question, your typical response is you just zone out.
Yeah.
Not again. Not again. Yeah.
Have we said this is a good
Hold on, wait a
guys?
second. What is a fucking bazoo, though, anyway?
A bazoo?
Are you thinking of a kazoo?
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe, I feel like I'm mixing two different instruments.
I know that there's I think. Maybe there's some bazoo players out there going, "Oh, Stephen, you wanker, like, the bazoo is real."
The kazoo is nothing on the bazoo.
Yeah. But I know that there's a bouzouki, and I don't really know what that is, but I know that my Logic, the music making program, has it on there, and I sometimes use it. And then a kazoo is like some little mouth thing that just goes...
Yeah, that's not like a proper instrument.
Hey, try saying that to a kazoo player.
I feel like that's just for Olympics and that kind of thing.
Yeah, guess what? Actually, speaking of Olympics, a little aside, interesting story, yeah? I was in an Irish pub the other night watching a Dundalk match, and I met an old Irish man, and he was like an expert in quizzes and sports quizzes and stuff. And he said, "Tell me this, young man, who was the first Irish Olympic medal winner?" And I said, I haven't a clue. I didn't have a clue. And I still don't remember who it was. But this is the most interesting thing. He won it for poetry.
Wow. Is darts in the Olympics?
No idea. But poetry used to be.
That's cool.
Yeah. Weird. I've never seen darts in the Olympics, so I think it isn't. Just because I've not seen it.
Yeah. Only real sports are in the Olympics now.
Anyway, right, so you've been waiting for this moment now for about 10 days, because at the end of our last episode, I said something that piqued your oh, whoa, that's a great thing to talk about. That's the answer. But we were coming to the end of our episode. I was really hungry, I think, and whatever. We couldn't go down. We couldn't pull that thread. But now we're gonna.
Yeah, so basically, I feel like we all live within these cycles. We're like robots that are relatively complex, so we are able to fool ourselves into thinking we're not robots just performing the same acts in and out with the same storylines, saying the same things to similar people. And the way I figured that out was because it's a lot harder to tell when someone's really smart. But my dad, and I love my father, but he's not sharp. I'd say I don't know what I'd say. He's just not sharp. And with a person like that, it's so much easier to see that they're just click and whirring. It's just like the same tape day in, day out. And he says the same things to me. And then we meet new people and he'll tell them the same stories, thinking, oh, this is the story, I'll tell them, I'll sound great. And sometimes it's already been told to that person and they're grimacing because, this is my theory, I think they're not grimacing because he's told them the story. They're grimacing because when he tells them the story for the second time, they can't fail to see that he's just click and whirring, that he's on a tape and he's just a robot, and so they are too, and that's what makes them so frustrated, and what made me so frustrated when my dad would tell me the same stories. So click and whir is from, I think, the book Influence, and it talks about how they used to get birds of prey, and they would find what their prey was and then replicate it in more and more ridiculous ways. So at first they'd make it like a stuffed doll look really like the prey, and then they would just make it less and less like the prey, but just still have something that vaguely resembled a red beak, and these birds would still fucking attack the bird, like, and all the I don't know what who deals with birds in this kind of way, I don't know, but they
ornithologist.
Yeah, sure. What did you say?
Ornithologist.
So the ornithologists were like, what idiots! But this is fundamentally what we do, just on a more complex level. And I think, looking at myself, because I had to ask, why do I get so annoyed when someone who can't help but tell me the same things and say the same things and try and sound profound, but it's, just regurgitated shit. Why does it bother me so much when he does it? And I think it's because it reminds me that I do the same shit in a maybe slightly less obvious way. And I think ultimately that's what we're all doing. You and I have both done this. You have like certain things that you say when you meet a person, and I lean on this even more when it used to be a girl, right? I'd have certain things that I'd be like, I'll say this and it'll impress her. And the pickup community back in the day was fully hinged on having these stories of high value that you would just sometimes just even make up, but then you would lean on them with every person you met. You'd say the same story and you do the same exact things. And I don't really know what to do with this information. It's just interesting. I see it happen all the time. I go into a coffee shop and the people will have the same conversations that they have with other people. They're just these crutches that we all lean on. The weather is a common one, but then there's more complex ones, less obvious, but that still make up a fundamental part of an individual's day or week or month.
Yeah, but I have to say I'm not. I'm more like a bit surprised that like this is new to you or something like that, and maybe also like a bit perplexed. Maybe that's too strong a word, but like I'm wondering like what you think an alternative would be, and if you think an alternative to working on habitual scripts is even possible. Because some of my most interesting friends have told me like the same story 5 times. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't say that it's only something that some, I don't know, like boring or whatever people do, So.
Well, I think what it highlights for me that I didn't maybe realize before is that people speak for themselves. And obviously we know that all actions are selfish, but on a like more visceral level, I started going, oh wow, we all just speak for ourselves. Like I talk about this particular thing because I want a particular reaction. And you can see this when, those times where someone's telling you the story for the 4th or 5th time and you're like itching to interject and go, I've heard it. Let's move on, tell me a different one. I've heard this story. And
sometimes when you say that, they just go, oh, yeah. And then they just finish it anyway.
This is what I'm getting at, is that it doesn't matter that they just want to tell the story. And that is the thing that highlights for me that conversation is fundamentally selfish. I just want to say what I want to say. I don't care if you've heard it 1,000 times from me. I just want to say it. And I've said it before, and for some reason I still like saying this thing. It's like having Cheerios in the morning and bolognese in the evening.
they do that thing, like, and I do it as well. It's like when somebody says they've heard, they go, oh, you go like, oh, did I told you that already? Oh, yeah. So I told you about the time that, like, the car.
Yeah.
Oh, I told you this. And then, so anyway, what happened was, you just can't fucking stop. It's funny. Yeah, although having said that, it does remind me of that episode that we did like fucking years ago now, about listening.
Mm-hmm.
And while I do agree that we're all, drone machines working on autopilot, robots, and the listening episode was very much like not about that aspect of us. It was much more about how, like, you can deliberately improve your conversational skills and whatnot. I don't actually think that they really contradict each other. Like, I think, we're all tip playing, what was it, click and whir? Machines, like, in every way, actually. But thinking right now about the virtues and the value of, like, being a good listener can mean that next time you're in a conversation, the thing that clicks and whirs will be a bit different. And it may be that your click and whir is, oh yeah, I value listening, and you'll just, like, click and whir into a listening format, then just listen.
For sure, I think that's a good point. But it was just an interest. It wasn't, as you were saying, it would be perplexing to not think that we're doing these things all the time. It was just interesting to understand the other side of it, of, like, why you get annoyed on the receiving end. And I don't know if you do, but lots of people do. So
just to clarify your point, you're saying that you think the reason you get irritated by this is actually because it shines a light. You're like, oh fuck, like, I am equally what's the word, like,
robotic.
Yeah, robotic, and also, like, not really paying attention to the other person.
Yeah. And determined. Like, I'm not deciding this. And, I have a friend that I've been going for walks, long walks, like an hour and a half, 2 hour walks around Clapham Common. And we just talk about free will and determinism. And she's completely determined that determinism isn't real. And it doesn't matter what kind of corner I back her into, she just refuses to buy it. And then she'll buy it in things that she's invested in. So, like, she's a bit overweight. She's quite overweight. And when it comes to obesity or fatness, she's like, yeah, that's out of your control. And I'm like, but mental health is also out of your control, right? Because we'd spoken about it the week before. She's like, no, that's within your control. So it's like certain things that are part of her she can't control, but other things she can. So she thinks she has full control over how intelligent she is. And how I said, could you be richer than Jeff Bezos? She's like, yeah. If I tried hard enough and da-da-da. I'm like, whoa. So she's fully on the other side of my belief system. We're so separate in regards to this. And I think most people are. When I talk to my dad about free will, he's the same. It's like, yeah, you have a lot of control over how you live. And so I think the intuitive, instinctive thing is to be like, I control my reality. And when people tell you the same stories, it sort of shines the light on. They have no control over this. They're just doing it again and again and again and again.
One of the aspects of us, like a characteristic of humans, is a feeling that we are in control and doing what we want and have free will. That feeling will never not be there. The feeling is a part of us. And it's a gift, right? Because otherwise we would kind of feel weird. We would feel like we were in a straitjacket if it was always completely apparent to us that we were just, being lived, as it were. Yeah, and so most people can't see past that feeling. Because the feeling is, like, so fucking strong.
Yeah. And do you think I don't know what it's like, but I imagine that people that are of higher intelligence are more likely to start to see the fabric of their reality.
I don't even remotely believe it, man. Because now that I've been like thinking so much about free will and the fact that we don't have it, and the fact that like there is an illusion of free will, there's an illusion that I'm choosing to act, think, believe, be, behave, etc. as I do. That all that's an illusion, and in fact, it's all just happening. And even when I decide to do one thing, and then I try and trick myself by going, actually, no, I'm going to decide to do the opposite. See, you do have free will. When I could see crystal clearly that the decision to not go with my initial decision was also itself just a decision that arrived in my mind and I didn't control. When I saw that, I immediately began to look at people who I'd always respected for their high level of intelligence very differently when it became obvious to me that they were completely living and acting as if all of their thoughts were like their own, and that they were all accurate reflections of what reality is.
Mm. Yeah, no, I'm not saying that all intelligent people believe this. It's more that certain things, certain hobbies, certain beliefs are held more frequently by intelligent people. Like I would say, smart people are more likely to invest. I know there's a massive emotional aspect to it, but I don't imagine if you're like have an IQ of 90, you're going to be like learning how to invest. It's unlikely. I'm not saying definite, but
I would say that I don't agree with this, but
I think here's why I think this. It's because it's not as simple as it seems once you actually believe it. Once you actually believe it, it's like clear as day. You can't unsee it. It's like the first time when you're young and you approach a girl for the first time, when all of society has told you you're not allowed to do this. It's like evil. And then you do it and it goes well. You can't unsee that. Now, and you've had this, I've experienced it. Now every time you pass a girl who you fancy and you do nothing, you can't do what everyone else does, which is just, well, obviously I can't do that. That's like evil. Yeah, I mean, they don't even think that. There's just no concept of this possibility. Now it's like this, if you don't do it, it's this stressful thing of like, oh, I should be doing this thing. There's an opportunity here that I didn't see before. And I think the same thing is true here, where if you don't know, it's really hard to know it. And there's a logical jump that I think requires... It seems really simple. What I'm trying to say is it seems really simple once you're there, but it does take a jump to get there.
Yeah, I agree with that. But also, it's because it's so counterintuitive. Again, to reiterate, the notion that we are not choosing anything we do, think, say, believe, act out, prefer, desire, any of that. It's just all arriving in consciousness. That notion is so thoroughly the opposite, right, to everything that we have been told in society, and I don't think, by
the way
it's
we live, right?
And the way, and the way we live. I think like all societies that I'm like remotely aware of all live as if we are independent, acting, free agents like that are responsible for our thoughts, desires, actions, and etc. So I don't know. Look, having a more intelligent brain, and I don't want to be throwaway, but like I have to say, like, whatever that really means, and I don't personally, I'm not clear on what that really would be, because I think intelligence like is really difficult to measure, and also it's like it's just a word, and what does it really point to? Because there are definitely facets of intelligence that people can be super strong in, and then other facets that maybe would fall under the term intelligence that people are fucking weak in. But anyway, so once it's been pointed out to you, or let's say like more to the point, you have been pointed to look at this for yourself. And I don't mean read books about it, but I mean look at your own experience of life. Look at the words that are coming out of your mouth. Examine the thoughts in your head and go, shit, did I choose this? Or did it just arrive there? Yeah. But if you're not, so once that's pointed to you, maybe intelligence would be helpful for you to like grasp it. But I think it's very easy to go through probably an entire human lifetime, even as someone who's highly intelligent, and just never think to even look at that.
Yeah, but what I've noticed also is that even when you have the intelligence, the ego, I think, is what stops people from seeing what's right in front of them. You know, where you do the thing like Sam Harris does, where he's like, okay, think of a city anywhere in the world. You got a city? Okay, sweet. What's the name of the city? Johannesburg. Why did you pick Johannesburg? Oh, because I went there 3 years ago and my mum's from there. Awesome. So you couldn't have picked any other city other than Johannesburg because that's the one you picked. And they'll go, no, but I was also thinking about choosing New York. And you say, yeah, but you didn't choose New York. So you didn't have a choice. Mm-hmm. That's the thing you chose. And then another thing that I've started saying is, okay, 30 days from now at 8 p.m., I want you to control what you're going to think about for the whole hour. Because you can't determine what you do if you don't determine what you think about. Or even just for a minute, just for 1 minute, control what you think about. And don't let thoughts that you don't want to come in. And they'll be like, yeah, that makes sense, I can't do that. And yet still can't make the jump of, therefore, I don't have control. Because thoughts define your action, right? So you don't do anything without first thinking something.
Yeah.
And so if you can't control what you think, you can't control what you do, so you don't have control.
And you can never you can never choose to think anything other than you're thinking. And if you say like, all right, you know what? Fuck you, man. This is bullshit. I am going to choose to think about my mobile phone now in 1 second. Check it out. Here we go. I'm thinking of my mobile phone. I decided to do that. I did decide. But you didn't decide to do this little experiment. And you didn't decide that the thing you would think about would be your mobile phone. Like, every decision you make, if you just go back a little tiny bit, you'll realize that there was never an option but to decide to do exactly what you did decide to do.
Another good one is taste. Do you like mushrooms? Some people say yes, some people say no. Why do you like mushrooms? And often you don't get like a real answer. Okay, yeah, on that level, it's true that we don't control what we like, but on higher levels we do.
But you know what? I'm just listening to that, right? It's making me think that a lot of people who believe in free will, for example, would consider themselves to be atheistic. Let's say they're atheists. So they don't believe in like religion or God or spirituality or anything like that, yeah? But it does seem to me that they are making a strange error. And the error is they are separating biological aspects of themselves, for example, whether or not they like mushrooms and how tall they are, and any other number of things like that.
Yeah.
And they're saying that, no, that's all determined. But my mind isn't biological. My mind is a soul. Oh, shit. No, but I don't believe in that. And so they're actually contradicting themselves. It is actually religiosity coming in by the back door. It's belief in a soul. Like, to believe you have free will is the belief that you are somehow, your mind is free from the flow of biology that every other aspect of you is entirely controlled by and is made of and is, yeah. Like, in the same way that, like, when you watch a nature documentary and we kind of, like, laugh at how animals are, like, so on their so do slaves of their instinct. Like, like that brilliant footage of like some bird in the Amazon, like the male bird is preparing, he's like really cleaning the ground and doing like a funny dance for like the female, and we laugh at it because they're so on autopilot. It's like ha, 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 look at that, he doesn't even know what he's doing, and then like they put on like kind of like funny classical slightly goofy music behind it, and we just kind of love it. But we're exactly like that. There's literally no difference between us and them at the base level, like,
Yeah. I mean, it is sometimes hard to think about, but like we were saying, that way of thinking that we define our existence seeps into everything. And, one good place where you can see this is the prison system, how we treat people that we send to prison. It's ruthless, and we put, now it's starting to change. So you have like Portugal has legalized drugs, which is kind of a determinism thing to do, right? You take the blame off the individual, because how could the individual decide to do that? And there's loads of other reasons why they do that, but most of what we do is putting the blame on the individual. We take someone who was abused as a child and maybe has some chemical imbalance and high testosterone and beats the shit out of someone, or maybe stabs someone, and then he's in prison for 20 years and in and out and in and out. And I don't know what the actual solution is, but no one's talking about it because we believe that person decided to do that thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like locking people up is a way of protecting the rest of society from that person, and also of like providing a new piece of information that prospective violent doers can take into account. And again, they're not taking into account deliberately, but you're just adding a piece of information out into the world that will become a part of the conditioning of other would-be criminals. And so then it will the knowledge that they may go to prison will change at least some people and prevent them from doing it. So that's the reason for incarceration. But yeah, I agree with you. It's like in most of the world, from what I can see, maybe countries like some Scandinavian countries kind of have it right, because I remember seeing a documentary about Norwegian prisons, and they were like really nice, almost like a kind of a shitty, boring holiday camp, but like comfortable, rather comfortable compared to what I've seen in other places. But yeah, absolutely, the vast majority of the world, even the most wealthy countries, like, which is kind of what we live in, and America is probably the most wealthy country in the world, and it's got a seemingly draconian prison system where people are treated as if they are really evil people. Whereas,
that's the point I'm getting at. Obviously, prison systems are necessary for the greater good in quotation marks, but it's that idea that it's on them, and there's inconsistency there too, because we put them in the system and then they come out and they're consistently more likely to go back.
Yeah. Because like we talked about, like if you put the idea out into the ether, into reality, that if you commit a crime, you will, likely be punished. So you'd hope that it would add into the reckoning, and these robots, which we all are, will be slightly less likely to commit a crime, because now another part of their calculations, which are all automatic, but another part of it will be there might be punishment. But equally, if you put somebody in a prison system from a young age, then they're spending years adding to their up-to-date conditioning, like things like hatred of authority, resentment of the system, like criminal skills, the influence of other criminals, a propensity for violence, all these things. So you're basically creating criminals.
Yeah. And I think most of the systems that I've seen, especially have seen documentaries about prisons in the UK and the US. It's not a place that's conducive to change through the environment. It's like you say, it takes the worst aspects of those people and exaggerates and magnifies them, because that's how they live in those environments. That's how you survive in those environments. So the system itself creates the thing that it's trying to, because the system isn't just trying to take bad, or shouldn't just try and take bad people out of one place and put them in another place and make them worse. It should, and it's intended to take them out of the standard system, take them away from the public so they can't harm them, and then reintegrate them by giving them the skills and the environment that allows them to change if possible. And if not possible, then not allowing them back into society.
Yeah.
And I think we don't do that, partly at least, because we think it's their fault. But you can see the contradictions everywhere you look, like how, people will say two different things at once. They'll be like, well, you're fully in control, but we need to change the education system, because if we don't change the education, then, X, Y, Z race won't ever have an opportunity, even though you're saying that we have free will. So I don't know what point, and it's interesting to see how it's different for everyone, but the point at which they admit there is something that's determined. Everyone will admit some things are determined, like you can't define where you're born, but you'll lose them somewhere along the way. And that's the bit that's like confusing. And I don't think you're losing them in the intelligent cognitive realm. I think you're losing them in the emotional egoic realm.
Also, the implications of it, at least in my case, are still unfolding. Very much so. And like I first read Sam Harris's book Free Will, and actually another thing that I really recommend that book, and I would also recommend a paper that you can find online easily, and just download the PDF, called Determinism Al Dente, and that was really interesting to me as well. But both of those sources kind of like made an amazing case for determinism, and largely convinced me, yeah. But it didn't have any real effect on how I saw the world for many years. Like, I mean, kind of coming back to it, and then because the implications of it are totally life changing, and they completely change how you view yourself and everyone else in the world. And in my own experience, they kind of very much change like how you feel in the world and the things that you value and want as well.
Yeah. For me, it used to make, prior to determinism, like fully viscerally believing it, I would blame people for things. I would hold them accountable and hold myself accountable. And it was stressful. And, if someone was a certain way, rather than being, now what I do is, if someone's a certain way and I don't like it, I'll decide whether I can accept that or whether I end the friendship or whatever else,
But no
and
resentment.
when you define,
is what you're saying. As much as possible.
No resentment. And what I found is that when that's the decision, I often am like, yeah, I can handle that. It's not as big a deal as I was making it out to be when I thought they had control. Like, if someone's 5-10 minutes late and I feel like they're doing it on purpose or whatever, that can make someone angry. Or like in traffic. So we were moving, and people were like doing quote unquote dickish things, being selfish, being dangerous. And that can make you really angry when you think they're doing it to you, and that they're doing it with control, with that they are determining what they do. But when you realize that that's not the case, in a lot of ways, and you really have to, like as you said, take years to do this, because it takes time to emotionally believe something that you believe in your mind. But yeah, you can let go of those pains, those frustrations, and those hatreds towards other people, because I not fully. I'm still on the process, but I I see that being the
Yeah,
path.
it is.
I do.
But
like,
it's just
when I was in that car, I wasn't angry, and I used to be a very angry driver. I hated people on the road, and they were beeping at. I wasn't driving. Bobby was driving, and they were beeping at her, and I was just like, "It's all right. It's fine. They actually can't control what they're doing." And it's so free.
absolutely, man. I would say, like, just a small, like, technical point is that you are not doing your less amount of anger. Like the less, like, if you feeling less resentment and less anger about what other people do, may happen, but you can't do it because you can't do anything. Like, it may be the case that you feel less anger, and you have seen now from, like, for example, the other day, and just in general, that is actually often the case, that you do feel less anger because these ideas are, like, sinking in to a deeper and deeper level, and the things that would normally cause you to feel resentment and anger, like, those beliefs are being really shaken and dissolved. So it's turning out that you're feeling less anger. But I think it's important not to get annoyed at yourself if and when you do feel anger, because remember, like, you're not actually responsible for doing this new, more chilled out version of yourself. It's just something that may materialize, and in fact seems, at least to me, very likely to materialize.
Yeah, well, I'll touch on two things here. So one is concepts, as we did an episode on it, and how you can't determine your concepts, and we can't say that one concept is true and another is false in a reality that we can't see truth or falsehoods because we don't see or feel or hear or anything enough of to actually perceive truth or falsehood. But you can have concepts that are more accurate and that will allow you to navigate the world.
You can also have concepts that are completely accurate, but from a certain perspective or given a certain goal. So if my goal is to get to the kitchen, it is a completely accurate concept that I need to, like, walk in the direction of the kitchen, and it's a completely inaccurate concept that I need to walk for 3 seconds in the complete opposite direction.
Yeah, but you could have another concept, which is I need to walk 3 seconds in the opposite direction, climb out the window, scale the roof, go round, and then come back down the other side, and then in through the kitchen window.
Yeah.
And I think, it's a good analogy for concepts, which is, yes, they might both get you to the same destination, but some are preferable. And that's the case here. It's like, I think that when we start to see that a certain concept benefits us in our life, like, because all we're trying to do with our concepts is feel less anxiety, less stress, and find more happiness. And, sex and food and all of these
But they're
things.
they're all for some level of
exactly.
essentially.
Exactly. So whilst we're doing that, if we stumble across something like free will and we test it out as this new concept and it happens to work for us in some small way, we're likely to try it again. And I think that's kind of what it is. And it's like it doesn't work every time, as you say. Sometimes I still get angry. I still get frustrated. I still get sad. All of these things when I, quote unquote, shouldn't. And so my journey to never getting annoyed at anyone takes longer because I test the concept, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But over time, as my concept gathering radar becomes more and more certain that the path to the kitchen is the straightforward one, where I just walk toward the kitchen rather than scaling the roof, I use it more and more. And that's what I've found. And then the second thing is, as you say, you have no control over whether or not you actually do it. It's just still happening to you. But that is also part of why determinism and free will, or lack of free will, is so great. It's because it's also allowed me to do stupid shit that would have made me really feel down and out about myself. Like, I forget something that I really needed, and before I'd be like, you fucking idiot. And sometimes I still do that, but a lot of the time I can be like, part of who I am is I'm forgetful. And I didn't decide to do that. It would be insane to decide to be forgetful. It's the definition of undecided. No one proactively decides to
Yeah,
to
your
forget
being forgetful is literally, absolutely, and in every sense, identical to a leaf that you see outside in a tree having the dimensions that it does. Would you ever get angry at the leaf for having the dimensions that it does? Obviously not. So one of your dimensions as a biological creature is you're forgetful. That's it. Yeah. And that's not good or bad. It's not bad to be forgetful. It's absolutely neutral, just like every other occurrence that is possible. Like, everything is neutral. It's only bad because your thinking mind labels it to be bad. Yeah?
Yeah, exactly. You want it to be different.
Yeah, you're literally...
You're staring at the leaf like, why isn't the leaf bigger or smaller?
I think it's the same as that. Like, it's
Yeah.
Like, you are a creature, you're an aspect of reality, an animal with characteristics. I am an animal with characteristics. And a leaf is an object with characteristics. A tree has characteristics. A mouse has characteristics. And each human has characteristics. And that's just it. And it's all biological. Like, even all of the aspects of you and your behavior that are conditioned are biological, because it's been conditioned into your biology. No thought can be created that is not biological. Thought is a biological thing. It's an object, like, that comes from a biological process. And so basically, so just kind of back to what you were saying a second ago, like, you ever happens in any moment, like, no matter, imagine you react to it resentment, which is what you've said you don't want to react to it. But you do, and you feel resentment. And then you think, that shouldn't happen. The opposite is true. That should happen. Yeah? Everything that happens in every moment is exactly what should happen. And every moment is exactly perfect. Because the only thing that can ever happen is the only thing that could ever happen. Yeah? Mm-hmm. And so when you say something is not how it should be, it's like, no, you're ass backwards. You're completely wrong. It's exactly how it should be. But you are wishing life to be something that actually shouldn't and couldn't be.
Couldn't is... yeah, exactly.
But given that thought and all that is biological, and whatever happens in any moment is exactly what has to happen in every moment, you're basically... by having these sort of conversations, for example, you are like changing the inherent structure of your brain and your being, yeah? So you're making it like more likely that while you feel resentment now, and that's completely fine and exactly what should be the case, it is maybe becoming less likely that you will feel a similar level of resentment in future instances, because gradually the structure of your brain, which is what produces thoughts, is actually changing. And I find that, like, really exciting.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. And also cool is this idea that a lot of the time we can't force change. I've tried. I've tried with all sorts of things. I've tried with diet. You know, when I wanted to get shredded, I'm going to force myself to... It happens when it happens. I've never been able to force myself to do things for long periods of time. If you look at people that try and diet down, like obese people that try and lose weight, or overweight people that try and lose weight, it's like single digits that keep the weight off. And this is largely due to the fact that they're not deciding it anyway. And they're trying to force a certain outcome that they can't force. And it has to I think it always has to come from a place of like a pulling, a yearning, rather than like dragging your feet.
Yeah.
And I think this ties into what you're saying. It's like, you have to just let your brain figure this shit out. And when it sees the rewards, it will double down. Not when you go, fucking do this thing, that thing.
Absolutely,
that
man. Like,
I have
found myself many times over the last little while, yeah, having an epiphany about this sort of thing, yeah, and thinking, oh, that like this epiphany will really help me to feel less anxious in the future, right? And instead of just like being kind of, let's say, happy that the epiphany came or whatever, I start to get stressed and I have to start journaling about the epiphany. I must start journaling so I can be unstressed. Which is weird. Like it's a weird amount of responsibility and control I'm still taking. Like in the thing, even though everything we've just said, you know, I'm literally. It's kind of ironic that I'm saying like, oh my god, I want to get rid of anxiety, so I'm really fucking anxious to write about this idea I've had because I believe this idea will get rid of anxiety. It's almost like, I don't know. Like it's ironic, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's the reticular activation system that ties into this too? It's like when we want something, like really want something, we'll see it everywhere. We'll find it. Like for instance, I've been curious about investing since I was probably 25 when Tam's father sat me down and taught me about it, and I learned a lot then. But I just forgot it because it was not applicable to me then because I had no money, like zero money. And now that I have started and I've started actually investing, now I see it everywhere and I want to learn about it in a really proactive way. Whereas previously I would want to learn about it, but I didn't really. And I would sit there berating myself like, why are you not learning about investing? And you would tell me, and I'd be like, why are you not acting on what Steven said about investing? You
because
know it's
your
the right
animal,
thing to do.
the animal you are, the organism, doesn't really give a shit yet. But it finally did, which is nice, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But you could never have made it do what it did end up doing. But you did also suffer a lot over the last couple of years because you've been screaming at yourself saying you should be doing this thing that actually you have ended up doing. But it wasn't because of the constant beration. And the constant beration was just a fucking waste of time. And it was like suffering that you actually didn't have to go through. But also, you had no free will.
Yeah, exactly.
And it could never have been any other way. But now it can be a lesson for you. Next time you find yourself berating yourself about something, which also won't be your free will, you'll just be doing it. But then it may occur to you, oh, remember the fact that I used to berate myself about investing and it never did anything, and then finally I just did it. Maybe this thing's the same. And then you may find yourself not berating yourself. But you won't be able to force yourself not to berate yourself because you can never force yourself to do anything.
You idiot! Yeah. Why did you berate yourself?
Stop fucking berating yourself, you fucking loser! Ah!
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, I'd love to go for a run. So, any last thoughts? No. I'm going to let you go for your run. Okay. Amazing. This has been the Good Life Guys Show podcast. Thank you for coming and doing.
Peace.
Goodbye. Peace.